Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, October 18th, 2019. Another example of wasted resources. There's an ongoing debate among economists about how the 2017 tax reform bill impacted the tax burden for the nation's highest earners. The papers and opinions are flying about, and the fact that smart people are spending so much time on this reminds me of why I decided to stop doing income tax-related work in the 1980s. Now, that work was profitable, and knowing how to arrange transactions in a way that legally lessened the amount of federal tax my clients had to pay was very valuable to those who were willing to pay for the advice. Now, almost all of the CPAs and attorneys I worked with in the tax planning business were very bright people. They could have devoted their skills to helping create businesses or to provide guidance to business owners on how to expand their businesses. But instead, their talents were largely devoted to helping business owners minimize their tax liability, thereby increasing the amount of money that a business or an individual could keep. Now, sometimes the ideas proposed were not good for the overall growth of a business, but were all but forced on these businesses by the income tax laws. At many Washington, D.C. think tanks, we have pretty much the same problem. Some very bright people are not working on things that could improve production or solve problems. They're not figuring out how to make U.S. products more competitive or working on solving problems in education or health, and they're not working on how to improve the well-being of starving nations. Instead, they are spending countless hours debating, essentially, the definition of is, as President Clinton famously said during a deposition. These economists and many other talking heads are arguing about the progressivity of the income tax code. In an article written by Scott Gans and Alex Brill, resident fellows at the American Enterprise Institute, the authors take issue with the conclusions reached by fellow economists Thomas Piketty, Emmanuel Saez, and Gabriel Zuckman, who found that the income tax is far less progressive after the tax cuts in the 2017 tax reform bill. Gans and Brill cite the work done by economists Jared Oughton and David Splinter, and they point out that some assumptions made by Piketty, Saez, and Zuckman were not accurate because they left out important data. These economists continue to argue over such critically important issues as whether a college student with a part-time job who is claimed as a dependent by her parents is counted as a separate poor household, or if she's considered part of her parents' household. They're arguing about how unreported income is distributed and counted, how the value of health insurance and retirement savings and distributions is measured, what fraction of taxes paid by corporations is actually borne by workers rather than by capital owners, and should realized capital gains data or corporate retained earnings be used as a better way of distributing corporate profits among households. Now, the irony of all this is that none of these extensive discussions would be needed if we replaced the federal income payroll tax system with the FAIRtax. It would be simple. Instead of debating how many angels are on a pinhead, these smart people would be forced to find other areas to debate. And again, almost any other subject would be more productive for mankind than a needless debate over the progressive nature of a corrupt and broken income tax code. In conclusion, when I see actions by the smart people that baffle me, I remember what I call the Hearst ruling. In 1999, the National Highway Safety Administration ruled that automakers had to put child safety anchors on every passenger seat of every vehicle they built. Now, the makers of funeral hearses were also required by this rule to install the safety anchors in their vehicles. In 2000, one of the hearse makers petitioned the NHSA for an exemption. They pointed out that the hearse is a single-purpose vehicle, that of transporting a body in a casket, and that children do not ride in the hearse's only seat, the front seat. But it wasn't until October 15, 2004, 4 years later, that the agency finally said, quoting here, "All funeral coaches, now officially defined as a vehicle that contains only one row of occupant seats and is designed exclusively for transporting a body and casket, and that is equipped with features to secure a casket in place during the operation of the vehicle, were permanently exempt from all child safety provisions. It took 4 years for the smart people at the NHTSA to correct this rather silly rule for hearse makers. Now, how long would it have taken you to make the same fix? See what I mean? You gotta wonder how much the hearse builders paid to lobbyists to get them to contact the NHTSA to get the rule changed. Now, perhaps the smart people will still want to debate things that don't interest most of us. However, if we enact the fair tax, we at least guarantee that the smart people and the swamp and the other members of the ruling class will have to find other ways to try and show how much smarter they are than the rest of us, and also find other ways to profit from benefits they currently sell to the highest bidder. If we're going to keep the present corrupt and incomprehensible income payroll tax system, then tax professionals will still be needed to help people keep more of their income. However, that just points out the sheer idiocy, like requiring child safety anchors in hearses, of keeping a tax system that everyone except the people who make money off the system or use it to control us, knows is just a plain stupid system. It's time for Congress to have serious discussions about replacing the failing income payroll tax system with the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.